So I was walking down Front Street in Lahaina, Maui, and I passed this homeless guy. Now, it was obvious that, his clothes hadn't been washed in many days. He could smell that he was homeless. And as I was passing him, like in that moment when we passed, I thought, well, I've got $20 in my pocket. I should hand it to him. And I kept walking. I ignored it for several steps. And then he was already behind me. And it really pulled on me that I should hand him this $20 because, I had it to give. And there have been many times in the past where I completely ignored that intuition, that feeling, that impulse to help somebody. So I crossed the street and I looped around so that I could walk down a little faster, get in front of him, cross the street back, and then approach him again. So as I did this, I walked fast, I passed him, I went down further so he wasn't aware of it, crossed the street, and then started walking towards him. In the meantime, I pulled the $20 out of my wallet, and as I walked by him, I said, "Here you go," and I handed him the $20. And he says, oh no, thank you. I've already eaten today. I have everything I need, but blessings. And that was a real lesson to me is, being willing to give. You don't always have to give, but, I'm really glad that I got that message and, actually went and gave that $20 to somebody else who needed it more that day. Welcome to the journey. Welcome to the Abundant Mind Journey. Today, we're going to discuss the paradox of giving and how giving more can actually create more abundance. If you're watching this live, share hashtag live, or if you're watching the replay, hashtag replay. This episode has been pre-recorded. It's being broadcast live on several social media channels. So if you wanted to leave a comment below, I'll be here during that presentation to comment. If you're watching the replay, hashtag replay, I also follow up with all of those comments. And if you can quickly just share a time when you've maybe benefited by giving, or as we start this episode, and then later maybe you could share your opinion. But right now, how important do you think giving is in the grand scheme of things, whether it's to create abundance in your life or if it's just good to give? We're going to discuss this in a little bit of an unconventional way here. I've got some stories to share with you about giving, and also we'll delve more deeply into why giving is a good thing and how that can create more abundance. So before we get started, just to take a moment, how important do you think giving is? Do you give regularly as part of your spiritual practice, or just part of wanting to help people? Or are you not convinced that giving is a good thing? Or differently, would you like to give, but you don't feel like you have enough to give? Just pausing for a moment to allow you to leave that comment, because that's important. It'd be really good to have a discussion on this where we talk about, giving and where you're at with that. Have you experienced any profound miracles with giving? I'd like to know. Okay, so now let's go to a story about giving. mindset stuff really worked, and in fact, it worked too well. So I got to the point of overwhelmingly abundance of money, but not abundance of time and abundance of spirit. So I had made a conscious decision to close that business, and I had a few other things in life that were happening where change was happening. So I decided the first house that I ever bought when I was 18 years old. I was renting it out. It was in Pennsylvania, and then I was living in Hawaii at the time. But the house that I had first bought in Pennsylvania that was rented out, the tenant was leaving, and I had just closed my business. So I made the decision to go back to that house and to renovate it and fix it up. So I fixed the house up myself, just something I wanted to do. I've been doing everything mentally for years. I was a math major in college, I had a 4.0 average, all mind stuff. And then when I got into business, it was also just a lot of mental beta brainwave thinking. So I wanted to do something more physical. I just wanted to have a project to like busy body, relax the mind. So this house was built in like 1918. It was like 70 or 80 years old. And it was a really beautiful brick house, but it was old. It had like 3 layers of wallpaper. All the windows were these old-fashioned windows that had chains and stuff. So my brother's a carpenter, and at the same time, he actually had bought a new house, and he was renovating it. So here I am, just moved back from Hawaii. I'm in Pennsylvania again, and I'm renovating this house. Now, every house on the street, like every third house, this was a neighborhood that was actually going downhill. When I moved in, it was a very nice neighborhood, but they were starting to buy it up as like rental properties, but they would Section 8 them out, and it just started going downhill, the neighborhood. Like the crime was intensifying, and it was turning from a good to a bad neighborhood. So everyone was trying to get out, and my plan was just fix this house up and sell it. So I spent 4 months working on it. Now my brother, the carpenter, he came and showed me how to put a window in. He took time away from his project. He had his wife telling him he has to renovate this house. He was on a strict deadline. Well, he came over, showed me how to put a window in. I put the other 11 windows in after he taught me how to do that. And he helped me in various ways, lent me tools, came over and helped me when he worked a full-time job, and then at night he was doing the full-time renovation of his own house that he was preparing to move into. And there were a few times where I left my project and helped him, but it was really lopsided. He helped me a lot more than I helped him. And when I was on Maui, it was pretty cool. On my morning walk, I would see Wayne Dyer like 2 or 3 times a week. I lived in let's just say the more western part of Kaanapali, Maui, and Wayne Dyer lived a little more east, about 3 miles down the road. So on my morning walk, I would leave from here and walk this way. He would leave from here and walk this way, and we would high-five each other. I'd say hi to him, and it was Wayne Dyer, if you know who he is. Well, one thing that Wayne Dyer really inspired me with years ago was I was listening to one of his talks, and he saw his son with, wearing a T-shirt, and Wayne Dyer knew that the son loved the T-shirt. So Wayne said to the boy, he said, "Hey, that's a cool shirt." And he says, "Oh yeah, it's my favorite shirt." And then he says, "Well, can I have it?" And the son says, "No, you can't have it. It's my favorite shirt." And he says, "Well, you don't love me enough to give me your favorite shirt." He goes, "No, it's my favorite shirt." And the lesson was that the true gift is to give someone something that is your favorite thing. That is the real gift. Now, just to backtrack on how this applies to the story with my brother helping me in the house. He obviously sacrificed his own time, and I wanted to show my appreciation to him, not in monetary terms, but how can I show him how I really appreciated everything that he was doing for me at this challenging time for both of us, and him still choosing to help me when I really needed it, because at that time I didn't know how to do a lot of this stuff, and was struggling, and he helped me out. So my favorite group when I was like 10 or 11 years old, still is the band called Black Sabbath. It's Ozzy's original group. Now, when I was 10 or 11 years old, this was just when I first got really heavily into music. And I mean, I would listen to, my prescription every day was, I would come home, I would listen to their second album called Paranoid, their first album called Black Sabbath, and then one other Black Sabbath album of my choosing. There was only 8 with Ozzy, and then one Ozzy record every day. Those were my daily vitamins, my daily requirements before I would listen to other music. And then usually all night long I would play one of the first 2 albums, either Paranoid, the album that I'm talking about here, or the first album, Black Sabbath. And it was my dream. They had been broken up since 1978. So when I was like 11 years old, it's 1991. They played together once at Live Aid, and prior to that, 1978. So my dream was to track each member down and get their autograph on the Paranoid album. When you open the Paranoid album, it's all 4 of them standing in a field looking really cool when they were about 19 years old. Now, this is my favorite album, and if you know me well, music is probably, I'm more passionate about music than any other topic, including, marketing or anything else. And if you knew me then and really know me, then you'll know how passionate I am about this group. It's my favorite group. And my favorite album, my favorite songs on there. Okay, so my dream, my main mission in life was to go to an Ozzy concert, get Ozzy to sign it. Go to a Black Sabbath concert and get the 2 members that were still in Black Sabbath at the time to sign it. And then go find Bill Ward, the drummer, wherever he's at, get him to sign it. It was my mission. Now, when I was 18 years old, I'm driving to work one day, and I had the chance to get that autograph. They announced on the radio, Black Sabbath had gotten back together, they reunited, and now they were going to be at the Neshaminy Mall in Northeast Philadelphia signing records. So I went there. I actually picked this brother up from school and got him out of school, and he was in 12th grade at the time, and we drove up to the Neshaminy Mall, about an hour away, and we stood in line. And I got the Paranoid album autographed. I got all the members to sign it. So my brother, he was my roommate the whole time when I discovered Black Sabbath, the first day I ever heard them. And as I got more intensely into music than I ever will in my life, because of that age at like 12 and 13, you just can go deeper in certain ways with things. So he understood the love that I had for the music and for having that album signed. He knew this was my mission in life to accomplish that. So, my favorite possession in the world, my favorite thing that I could possibly do was to give him that copy of that record. So, to me, the giving was an expression of, in this case, not really abundance, but it was just the expression of extreme gratitude. And that it was able to show someone something deeper than money. I mean, I could have wrote him a check for a few $1,000s saying, he's a carpenter, he makes $45 an hour, whatever it is. I could have tried to pay him. He wouldn't have wanted to accept that. So in this case, just giving was just a wonderful experience. So here's something to experiment with, and this is the paradox of giving. Now, if you give selfishly in order to receive, then you've immediately blocked it and missed the point, and you actually prevent yourself from receiving. Now, the trick is when you study, the Eastern mind and, law of attraction kind of things, and just the way that our mind works on a subconscious level. What happens is you have to want something, but not want it too much. So many people will say, when it comes to money, they will say, well, money's not important. Well, and at the same time, they want more money. Well, right now you're contradicting yourself. And it's also a mistake to make money too important. If you just say, well, no, money's really important. And then when you look at your actions and if you make them all about money, you sabotage yourself in a different way. So non-attachment to outcome is one of these, Zen, Eastern mindset kind of things. And it's not only an Eastern mindset thing. If you've ever studied St. Francis of Assisi, who was a Christian monk, Franciscan monk, if you're unaware of his story, I suggest you go and watch a documentary. There's also an old movie from the 70s called Brother Moon, Father Son, something like that. Look up the story of St. Francis. It's a really powerful story. And his recommendation was, like in the context of just do your work fully and then give the result of that to God, or just give it over to doing it well, and build your wall. So he lived as a hermit monk. So for his little house that he lived in, he had to build like a stone wall around it. So he would just spend his time not rushing, building the wall one stone at a time as well as he could, but not stressing and doing it better than he was able to with the tools that he had. He just gave it his best, his honest best, and took his time to do it properly, wasn't hurried. And he says, at the end, if the wall wasn't built well and it falls apart, then you just build it again. It's no big deal. And that's life. And you also don't get too excited if you built the wall and then 50 people come and tell you how great a wall it was and how awesome that was. You don't get excited about that, overly excited. You can have joy in it both ways. There's a poem by Rudyard Kipling called If, and it says, if you can deal with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. Paul in the New Testament talks about, I know how to abase and I know how to abound, meaning that he could live with very little. Abase is kind of like a poor state, and abound would be the abundance, the lush state. Myself, I've lived both in my life too. We grew up very humbly, different times where we struggled. My dad's income through his business was seasonal, and there's times where we had great abundance, and there's times when we had very little. So, not having that fear related to, losing what you have is important. And in giving, there's a universal law. It's actually discovered by Isaac Newton. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. In spiritual terms, it's do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's the golden rule. Now, why is it called the golden rule? Well, because it's golden, right? It's a way to prosper. These are principles that go back in time for thousands of years, and all the religious traditions have this thought. And it's paradoxical because you would think, wow, if I give something, like if I have an apple and I give you the apple, well, now I don't have an apple. So we have this idea that there's a loss there. And but going back to the universal principles, is for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So for every gift, every time you give something, you're creating a vacuum where what's the opposite of giving? If for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Well, the reaction is receiving. And if you give, you're telling your subconscious mind that you have an abundance. You get the good feeling of the giving, but also you are training your mind to understand that you have plenty. So you get yourself out of this scarcity mindset. It's, if you're focused on how am I going to get enough for myself to live, you're in a scarce mindset, and your brain will actually sabotage you in subtle ways so that the brain just wants you to live in accordance with your belief. So all of your habits are really just software to install, like for your beliefs. The belief is the software, and the habit is the thing that just flows from the beliefs. So if you're constantly worried about, am I going to have enough? Then your brain will operate in a way that keeps you in, am I have enough? You're in like survival mode. But if you start giving even a small portion, just like being generous, wanting to share, wanting to help people, now you're subconsciously telling your brain that, I'm someone who all of my needs are taken care of and I have enough to help others. And now other people are thriving because of me. And it's just a much more powerful way to operate. And looking at in our previous episode, we talked about really like how everything's connected, these processes, a front and a back. You can't have the front without the back. As soon as you talk about up, that creates down, right? So direction, when we start naming directions, all of these things, it's, people think that these are two separate things. Giving and receiving are the same thing. And they're the same thing in the fact that, okay, how can you receive something if it wasn't given? So the moment you give something, you're creating a receiving on the other end. The person who receives that got something and you gave something. So giving and receiving right there in that one instant, it's the same thing, right? It's the same action. We're calling it giving because it's going from me to you. You're calling it receiving because it's from me. I mean, it's, you're getting it from me. This is just language, right? The action is one action. It's the transmission of energy. So understanding that the giving and receiving are really the same thing, and we create a flow. Now, through meditation, my realization on a spiritual level is this: the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter. These are just words. But something out there, like we live in an abundant universe. If you plant an apple seed, you can have an apple orchard that can feed thousands. All of the resources are already here on the planet. There's an abundance of everything. People tend to think that it's limited, but there's enough land in North America alone for everyone on the planet to have their own acre of land. So we're not really running out of land, especially when you can consider how many people could live on 1 acre comfortably and then have several acres of gardens and recreational land and everything. So the resources aren't as limited as they want you to believe. They just have this belief because it's competition, it's scarcity, it's non-abundance, right? There's this other mindset out there. But anyway, this abundance naturally wants to flow to you and through you, because if you look at God, does God care about you more than everyone else? Or does God love everyone equally? Well, the thing is, God does care about you more than everyone else, but he also cares about everyone more than everyone else. So God, the universe, it cares about us all very deeply. It wants us all to thrive. It wants us all to be abundant. And when there's a need, you can look at, God is like the main internet, the universe. It's like this main internet that actually sees a need and it wants to get resources to go to fill that need. Now, if you try to hold everything that comes your way and say, let me keep it, it's mine, then if you have a hose and the hose is flowing with water and you're watering your garden with it, well, if you try to stop the water flow and say, well, let me just keep this little bit of So now I encourage you to put this into practice. Think of an area that you could give. When you see someone that when they enter your awareness that they need help, you can give of your time, you can give of your money, you can just go out and try to help someone. So right now, think of someone that you could help in some way and go out and help them. And then just experience the goodness of doing that. And you've just created a little more abundance in your life. You've allowed energy to flow more through you. You have the joy of knowing you did something good. And now you open up to the miracle of more things flowing through you. And just pay attention to how that feels, and you'll know that you're on the right path. If you have any stories of anyone who has helped you, then drop a comment below. Would love to hear about it. Or a positive experience of helping someone recently. If this inspired you to go out and help someone, I would love to know about it. Leave a comment below, and I will really look forward to that story, because I try to help people as I'm aware of people who need help. I try my best to always help, and I want to encourage that, because the world becomes an abundant place when everyone realizes that the wealth that we already have, and when we share that wealth, we bless others by letting our many blessings bless many others. We'll be back next week with more paradoxical wisdom on abundance. And the Abundant Mind Journey is something that if you just watch this program on an ongoing basis, you're going to open up your mind to more abundance in your life. And we will be changing the format from week to week to keep it interesting. You can subscribe to this entire series, past and future episodes, at jurni.tv/abundant. Aloha.